Well, my computer keeps talking to me. Welcome to the East Neighbourhood Forum, the last of the municipal year. Thank you all for attending and for attending other meetings and your contributions. First of all, can we take any apologies, Lewis, at all?
No apologies received, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can we can ask people for to approve the accuracy of the minutes?
Yeah, agreed, Chair.
Is that approved? Yeah. Are there any matters arising from those minutes?
No, Chair.
No, thank you. Just before we get on to the body of the agenda, I've a number of requests to move item 7 to item 4 after the neighbourhood policing report. I think this is a reasonable request given the immediacy of the news that has come forward, and also the fact that I think a number of people have to get away to meetings. Now, I'm not belittling the importance of the strategies which follow, but I think they're the most. I'm trying to look at the agenda in terms of the most immediate relevance to us, or to the majority of us. So apologies to Ducky councillors and to Mosley councillors, and I hope you can bear with us on that one. And just a note to presenters, and it was a point which is, again, I think Councillor Billington's made, but other people as well. If you can make your presentations relevant to the local area and to the wards, Mosley, the Stalybridge wards and Duckingfield, I would be grateful. You've only 10 minutes, so obviously you may need to have a think about what the most relevant points are as well. Okay, so on to item 3. Lewis, who have we got to present that?
Sorry, I was on mute there. We have for item 3, we have Phil Davies, I believe.
All right.
Are you still here, Phil?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, would you like to introduce yourself, Phil? And as I say, you got 10 minutes and then some questions. Is that okay with everybody?
Good evening, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Phil Davies. I'm the Chief Superintendent who's in charge of Tameside Police. So I'm the commander of the district. I have been invited to join you this evening by Sandra Stewart, who thought it might be useful just to give you a high-level input into a few changes around our neighbourhood policing model, and then take any questions that you may have. Those I can't answer, I'll take back to my team at a tactical level and get them to reply to you. So I think the first point I want to make is, and you'll have seen the glossy brochure that's come with my agenda item, the first point I want to make is you shouldn't see a significant amount of change or impact in relation to the structure of our teams, because we've been working towards this model for over 12 months. In anticipation that we knew that it was coming, we've been gradually migrating towards Tameside North and Tameside South teams, both being led by an inspector and both having a mixture of police officers and PCSOs. The significant changes that I do want to cover are primarily around the purpose of neighbourhood policing and why we've made those changes. So the purpose of our neighbourhood policing model is absolutely to get to the root causes of crime and antisocial behaviour within communities and being present in communities, and problem solving with our partners and volunteers and the community itself, with officers who are dedicated to doing that role. Now that sounds quite obvious in relation to how you'd expect a neighbourhood policing model to work. But for the last few years, we've been in a position where neighbourhood officers are being abstracted for other duties more than we would like. And that's in particular in relation to backing up and supporting our response policing efforts, but also in supporting wider force requirements for resources such as big football matches and city centre policing, nighttime economy, that kind of thing. Well, the first point I want to make is that these officers who are now allocated, most of them you will already know, but these officers that are now allocated are what we're calling ring-fenced, meaning unless there's a critical issue on the district or beyond, they're going to be left alone to get on with neighbourhood problems and neighbourhood policing. Much more than was possible in our previous models. The second point I want to make is around the workforce mix. So you will be seeing on your wards more uniformed police officers with police powers, and you'll be seeing less PCSOs. And that's a conscious choice that's been made by the chief officer team right across G&P in relation to what we want our neighbourhood staff to do. And we want our neighbourhood staff to do a lot more work which requires powers. So that would be the obvious, the obvious activities of arrest, stop search, entry into houses under warrant, searching, and all of those things that you would expect from a warranted police officer with the powers given by the King. PCSOs, police community support officers, do not have those extent of powers, and that whilst they are very valuable to our team in terms of visibility and community engagement and intelligence gathering, we want a model that's more responsive and flexible to neighbourhood policing problems, which is why that dynamic is changing. There will be a PCSO for every single ward dedicated, so that's 19. And they will be supported by more police constables sitting above a sergeant and an inspector. The other thing I just want to point out that's changed is the shift pattern. Now, whilst that you might not think that's immediately going to impact you, the shift pattern has been changed to provide more coverage across the working year, 365 days of the year, and less gaps of particular officers being off for rest days and those kind of things. So you will be able to contact your local neighbourhood beat officer more readily, and they won't be off for too many days in a row before you get to see them again. And that change has been undertaken with a huge amount of consultation with the Police Federation, and that now has gone live. The final bit I just want to cover in terms of visibility is making best use of technology. So an app will be launched, a mobile app, very, very shortly in the next few weeks, which will allow you to make direct contact and have direct interaction with your PCSO and police officers. It will keep you up to date of any staffing changes, so you know exactly who is covering which beat, and that information will be in the palm of your hand, and you'll be able to make ready access to the officers that are in your area. So all of this was in response to some public consultation that was undertaken about 18 months ago about what the public wanted from our neighbourhood policing model, and we are now in a place where we can deliver that. So you've got ring-fence resources dedicated to the wards, readily accessible through technology and through the visibility itself, and having wider flexibility in relation to their powers to really solve crime and ASB problems on the districts. And that's about it from me. I just wanted to let you know that change has already taken place. It started 2 weeks ago for us because we had a soft launch on it. And we're really looking forward to the productivity gains we're going to get from this change. And in addition, it's allowed us to dedicate some resource to, for example, to schools-based officers. And that also is going to assist us on the network as well. So I think that's probably about 7 or 8 minutes. I'm open to questions on anything I've said.
Well, Can I just start us off by just asking you a little bit more about the app? Is this an app which is available to the whole public, or is it available just to specific partners, or is it, you know, can you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's available to the whole public. We're going to do a secondary launch of that with all of the communications you would expect when it goes live. It's just not quite ready yet. It's called Be in the Loop, and it'll work on any electronic device that you have, be it phone, tablet, whatever. And it's something that will give you community alerts, but it will also give you an opportunity for two-way conversation as well. And it's open to the general public.
Excellent, thank you. Louis, have we got questions?
Yes, we have hands up from Councillor Sharif and Billington.
Councillor Sharif, do you want to go first?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Phil. Thank you for that. What's popped into my head straight away is obviously in Mosley we've got 2 PCSOs. What happens to the other PCSO, and what's happening to all the extra PCSOs? Are they being put into some other kind of duties, or so how does that kind of bit work? Thank you.
Yeah, that'll be a gradual migration of numbers through natural wastage. So as things stand, you have 2 PCSOs. There'll be an initial redistribution process to put in where we have vacancies across Tameside. They will be placed on wards. So you may see some movement from your ward from one of the PCSOs if we've got a gap somewhere else. The PCSOs who are working with us will be encouraged in the medium term to join the police as a regular police constable, given the skill set they already have. And those who then retire or move on to other things through natural wastage, that's where the numbers will reduce.
Okay, is that fine, Taff? Councillor Billington?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering, in a way, it's pretty much, in terms of PCSOs, it's the level generally what we've had across the borough. But what we did have prior to that, sorry, 1 minute. So in general, we had certain specialist areas like Stalybridge Town Centre. There was a dedicated team for there. But what I would like to see is, as well as maybe an increase in resource for Stalybridge South, because generally Stalybridge South always seems to be an afterthought because it's seen that there's less crime there. But the thing is, with Stalybridge South, we are going to be, we already are, and we're going to get even bigger, much larger geographically. And we had to, nag and moan for the police to even have a car to go around the ward. So yeah, I'm just concerned about that, and if we could have some extra resource, because I can see, like in a lot of the rural areas, we are seeing a bit of an increase in crime there. So any feedback on that would be great. Thank you.
That was quite quiet, but I think I got the gist of that. So you're asking about an increase in resources in Stalybridge South. I can't give you the specific figures for Stalybridge South tonight, but I can demonstrate through an email via Claire Galt, our Chief Inspector, the resource you'll be getting at Stalybridge South. If you feel that's not enough for the problems in your area, then I'm very willing to have a conversation about it. The spread and distribution of the resource, which is an increase in resource across the board for Tameside. So I will now have more neighbourhood officers than I had a few weeks ago. That spread is based on demand analysis, both crime, ASB, and calls for service for other matters. So as you can appreciate, our resources are finite, so we put them where they're most needed. If once you've got the detail from Chief Inspector Galt, if you want a further conversation about it, I'm absolutely happy to have that.
Thank you very much for that. I look forward to it.
Brilliant. I mean, are there any other questions?
Chair, Councillor Lane's got a hand up.
Oh yeah, Councillor Lane.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one. We have mentioned it a few times regarding Duckingfield Town Hall, where there used to be a post there, and was asking to see if we can reopen that post again. It doesn't cost the police anything, doesn't cost anybody anything, because obviously it's accessible to everybody that uses the town hall. And just wondered if we're any further forward with that position. Thank you.
I'm not sure that's a question for myself, because I'm unaware of any council decisions around use of estate. So it's difficult for me to answer that one. If there is estate available to the police, we'll use it.
Right. Well, you have used. Sorry to interrupt you, but we have used it for some time ago, and it has been on the table for quite a while now to see if you can come back into it. Obviously, it's free of charge, and the post is there, and we just find it a bit awkward that you know, your officers have to actually walk all the way from Ashton to get into Duckingfield, when really they could use the facility there, and obviously have a break and have the tea there, rather than going up to Hyde or going into Ashton and wasting that time. So I just wanted you to sort of see if you can put that back on the table for us, please.
Well, I'm absolutely supportive of any available space across the district that we can use for stop-off points and that kind of thing. It makes absolute sense. What I will say, though, is that it's really important that the officers start their shift at Ashton, because they're going to get intelligence briefings, they're going to get interaction with their supervision, and we have to do that as a team. So I'm not supportive of a post where they turn up for duty at that post, because they'll miss out on all the team activities we've got based for working on our issues. But if there's an opportunity for a post to be used as a stop-off point, that makes absolute sense to me. I'll ask the question on your behalf, but it's a choice on using such facilities is obviously a matter for the council to offer it to me.
Thanks very much for that. Much appreciated.
Okay.
So I would have thought that it's something we could approach the chief exec about, and just raise this as an issue from our side, and you know, to make that partnership work better in the way that you want it to, Phil. So I think if we could do that from our side, then perhaps you can have a think about how you might see it working on your side, and we can get together on that one with the Duckingfield councillors involved.
Absolutely. I have a one-to-one with Sandra about once every 5 or 6 weeks, so we speak regularly, so it shouldn't be a problem to raise that as an agenda item. Okay,
that's great, thank you. Are there any more hands up there?
No, there isn't, Chair.
Sorry?
No, there isn't, Chair.
No. Right, well, Phil, thanks for that. I mean, I think we look forward, you know, in the future to you coming back or one of your officers to talk about priorities in the for the 4 wards that we no, it's not more than 4 wards, is it? How many wards are we? I don't know, 5 that we cover, and to have a sort of more in-depth discussion perhaps about that and how this new policing model's going, and etc. So I hope you'd be happy to do that.
I'd be very happy to do that, and that was going to be my parting comment, is whether we can do this on a regular basis, so I can get a feel straight from yourselves what you're requiring out of my officers. So I'm absolutely happy to do that. Thank you for the invite.
Okay, thank you very much. So rapidly moving on, and to item 4, which is the Staley Bridge regeneration levelling up bid, and I understand that Julian Jackson's going to introduce it, and that Mike Reed will follow Julian. I think that's the way it's ordered.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I'll just introduce myself. I'm Julian Jackson, Director of Place at Tameside Council. So I'm leading on this scheme, the delivery of these proposals, which we're going to talk about more. Mike Reed's going to go through a presentation. we had the announcement last week and what we want to do for the £19 million funding for Staley Bridge regeneration. What we want to do today is just outline the proposals, including what's going to contained in the capital bid, and also talk about the next steps as well. So we'll do a brief presentation on that. At the outset, I just want to say that the council will be putting in a governance structure involving all ward members, so there's detailed oversight of the proposals and the delivery of the proposals going forward. But I'll hand over to Mike now, just to go through the brief presentation I referred to.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Chair. So I'll just take you through a brief presentation now, and we'll try and be as concise as possible. So Staley Bridge capital regeneration funding. We obviously have had proposals in place for Staley Bridge for some time, but despite work that's been undertaken to date, there's still a number of challenges that we recognise that need to be addressed within the town centre. So in that context, a bid was submitted to Levelling Up Fund round 2. That bid was unsuccessful, although the feedback received was positive. And then on 15th of March, in the UK budget, it was announced that Staley Bridge would be one of the capital regeneration projects, which would be awarded £19.9 million. So just in terms of how the Levelling Up Fund 2 bid itself was put together, it was looking at what opportunities there are in Staley Bridge to bring forward more residential into the town, to build on the successful events that have taken place over recent years, such as Street Fest, making full use of our heritage buildings, also supporting the growing independent businesses in the town centre through generating more footfall in the town, improving the pedestrian routes through Staley Bridge and creating a safer, more secure environment within the town itself, and also delivering better access into transport hubs such as the rail station. So those proposals within the LUF bid were focused around enabling infrastructure around Staley Bridge West, public realm improvements, and the delivery of the Staley Bridge Cultural Quarter at the Civic Hall and Ashley Cheetah Art Gallery.
Sorry, is the presentation going to be moving? Because it's just stuck on the same slide for me.
Apologies, is that stuck on one slide?
I'm still on the first slide.
Right,
Yeah.
Apologies for that. Let me see if I can address that at all. Is that moving through at all, anyone?
I think it's done the same thing. Just try and go through onto a different slide for me. Okay.
Right, okay.
Let me have a go. I'm just going to share my screen.
Okay.
Can you all see my screen now?
Yes.
Right, let me just check it's moving through. Is it moving through for you?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Perfect.
Right.
If we could just go through to slide 6, please.
You'll have to guide me here because I don't actually have any page numbers.
Okay. So if you scroll through to there's a proposals map.
This slide?
Next slide on, please.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have been making a conscious effort not to read out the material that's on the slides, thinking you'd all have that before you. But anyway, so just showing this plan, which sets out how the proposals kind of fit together for Stalybridge. So you've got the Stalybridge West regeneration sites, currently the brownfield in ownership of the council and the pension fund, moving from the rail station towards Castle Street. Then you have got the art gallery and civic hall, creating the cultural quarter, and then between that you've got the streets and spaces that tie in the linkages through from the rail station up to the cultural quarter and the rest of the town centre, and within that context as well, the setting of the River Tame and the canal. So if we just move to the next slide, please. So this slide just then sets out how the capital bid itself is split in terms of the funding allocations. Just over £11 million allocated towards enabling infrastructure at Stalybridge West to unlock the residential development on those sites. 6.1 million around public realm, create better pedestrian routes and improve access into public transport, and then 2.7 million for the cultural quarter, focused around repair works to the civic hall, complementing the existing programme, and further repair works and internal restoration around the art gallery and library to improve accessibility, including the provision of a new lift up to the first floor of the art gallery. Okay, could I get the next slide, please? So in terms of the next steps as we move forward for Stalybridge West, we'll be pulling together the detailed delivery strategy and development perspectives. That's going to inform our soft market testing to go out and secure the procurement of a preferred delivery partner for the Stalybridge West sites. And then the capital works themselves will focus on the provision of replacement car parking to free up the surface level car parks and a new footbridge across the River Tame. Next slide, please. And for public realm works, the Heritage Walk improvements along Market Street will be delivered through the remainder of 2023. And that additional funding will then be used to deliver further public realm along the remainder of Market Street and into other areas of the town centre, and that will also be aligned with the works around the bus and the rail station. Next slide, please. Then around the cultural quarter, as works will then commence on the civic hall, and then a delivery programme we put in place for the Ashley Cheetham Art Gallery and library. So we'll be able to progress the works in that location, and then as Julian noted at the outset, we'll be putting in place governance arrangements to ensure that we do engage with all ward members around the delivery of the programme. Clearly there are a number of lessons for us to learn from the experience we've gone through over recent years with the Heritage Action Zone, and we are mindful of a number of the lessons from that around ensuring there's appropriate governance in place for project delivery, appropriate engagement with all ward members and communication as we progress. And we'll be particularly mindful of some of the learning that comes out from that programme as we move forward to what is hopefully a exciting few years for Stalybridge as we deliver on this funding. We're still awaiting further confirmation on timescales for spend and delivery, but we anticipate receiving that from government very shortly. Okay, thank you, Chair.
That's great. Thanks for that, Mike. I mean, I think the first thing to say is that obviously, you know, we warmly welcome this funding boost for Stalybridge, and it is something which, you know, we've been working towards certainly since since I've been on the council in 2015, and we've sort of moved forward from thinking in terms of individual ad hoc developments to, a more holistic approach to development. So we welcome this because it reinforces that approach. I think my first question, just to kick it off, and then I'll open it up to the floor, is obviously we're very keen that this moves forward quickly and that we get development into Stalybridge as quickly as we can to boost the economy. But my sort of concern is that we need some sort of statutory plan or statutory instrument to ensure that these developments aren't interrupted by sort of ad hoc proposals, developments coming in the sort of left field, if you like. Have you taken that into consideration, and how are you working that one into your plans?
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a very good point to make, and I think it's something that has been discussed in previous meetings, and I think the position that we're in with Stalybridge specifically is there's been a number of separate pieces of work that have been undertaken over recent years that we're conscious that needs to be pulled together into some kind of a clearer delivery framework, which does look at those issues kind of more collectively. Clearly, there's also a statutory function through the council's local plan, which is a separate process, but that will be underway shortly through the planning policy service. And it's particularly then important to make sure that does take full account of all these issues, so we can try as best as we can to bring these developments forward in a comprehensive manner rather than in a piecemeal approach. Brilliant.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll look forward to the local plan emerging. Lewis, have we got some hands up? I'd imagine we have.
Chair, there are two hands up from Councillor Dickinson and Billington.
Okay, Councillor Dickinson first then.
Thanks, Chair. This is a massive project, and I think it's like the last stand for Stalybridge, so it has to be right at the end of the day. I mean, I won't take up this meeting because we will be having, I'm absolutely sure, well, Councillor Sweeten said we'll be having a meeting as soon as possible, which is great. What I'm I can't say confused, but I don't understand. It says Stalybridge West, 11.1 million. Now, for years and years and years, the reason we've never been able to move forward is because of Stalybridge West, and the pension fund owns Stalybridge West. So now we have this funding. So I don't see how that quite fits in. Does that money go to the pension fund? Do the pension fund still own the development once we've spent 11 million? And I'd just like you to explain that relationship, please.
Yeah, no, thanks, Councillor. It's a very good question, actually. I think for the first point, it's just important to note that within what we term as the Stalybridge West site, some of them are pension fund land, and some of them are owned by the council.
The majority is.
The majority, no, that is correct. The majority, which is the section close to the rail station.
Yeah.
There is a number of reasons why some of these sites haven't come forward in the past, and one of them is that because we've got surface level car parking on part of the land that's owned by the pension fund and also part of the land that's owned by the council, creating a reprovision of that parking in a new facility is quite challenging in viability terms, which is one of the enabling pieces of infrastructure that this funding seeks to address through provision of a new multi-storey car park facility to release that land for development. So that deals with something at the outset, and then also the connectivity into the pension fund site. The other key piece of infrastructure that we'd look to put in place is the additional pedestrian bridge across from Castle Street into the pension fund land, which improves that linkage through the site. So principally, that's how this funding will support development on the council land and on the land that's within the control of the pension fund.
Okay, so the plans we've seen where housing's going on the pension fund land, that will be up to the pension fund. This money is to be spent on infrastructure.
Yeah, which unlocks that opportunity.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
And in terms of what I noted before in the presentation around the council seeking a preferred partner for delivery of some of the development, that will be on the land that's owned and controlled by the council rather than the land of the pension fund. So there's two parts, but they're related in terms
it's
of.
Fine, Mike. I've got it now.
Yeah, no,
okay,
thank you.
you.
That's a good question.
Okay, Councillor Billington.
Yeah, I just want to say a few things actually. First of all, the press release from the government says that the funding is subject to further scrutiny. Not all of these bids that have been announced in this round 2.5, as I like to say, are going to get that money. So there is the chance that Staley Bridge doesn't get that money. I was actually in a meeting with DLOC earlier this week, and it was going on about levelling up bids. And they were saying that their biggest concern around levelling up bids is over the deliverability of those bids. Are the councils actually capable of delivering these bids? And given the fact that the government are going to place further scrutiny on Staley Bridge's bid, I'm sure they'll look at the absolute failure that's been the Heritage Action Zone and run off. I'd run a mile after seeing what's gone on there. To the point that we're having to return money. The government wants to see things getting done. And the thing is with the HAS, things didn't get done. We're actually returning money back because we haven't been able to spend it in time. And what money has been spent absolutely looks a mess. It's absolutely shocking and shameful what's going on Market Street, I have to say. But I really do think that we do need to get this deliverability sorted. What confidence does the council have in making sure that there is this deliverability in place? We've got the right people there.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Just pick up a couple of points there in terms of, yes, we are aware that in terms of, as I noted, we've not yet had the full funding agreement, and the information that we've received does note that some of this is down to, there is need to be further assessment undertaken, but that's specifically more around clarifying any issues around market subsidy, which is state aid in older terms. Obviously, the bids that have been selected have already gone through quite a rigorous analysis, which is what the government has published on its website as part of the budget documentation. But also, as I noted at the end of the presentation, we are mindful of some of the lessons to learn from delivery of the HAS scheme over recent years, and ensuring that we do have the appropriate governance and delivery structures in place and a full delivery program approach from the outset to ensure that we do utilise the opportunity that this funding will give to maximise the potential for Staley Bridge and address some long-standing issues for the town.
Would it be helpful if I just came in there as well? Just to say that, the council are committed to the scheme. We'll be giving reassurances to government around deliverability. We know that's so important in terms of actually kind of making sure that these schemes happen to programme, and I'll be ensuring that the resources are in place to deliver the schemes subject to this funding.
Julian, I know you haven't been in the job for long, but could you please give some of your own overview and insight into why the HAS went wrong and why it was allowed to get in the state that it's in, please?
Yeah, I mean, Councillor, I'm aware of some of the issues around the HAS, and there's been some issues around the programme, but and it's not just one single issue. There's been around some of particularly around the work that's happening at the moment. We'll be back on site on the 19th of April. But there's been issues around kind of ordering of materials, those sorts of things. that we're resolving, and will be resolved and get back on site and get completed by September. And I think really it's just issues that we've had to overcome around which are kind of quite universal in terms of program management for these types of schemes. We've had to take into account at this time as well, sort of inflationary pressures as well. I'm talking about the broader program now, and it's having a program that we're absolutely certain we can deliver, and working with internally, but also with partners to make sure that we can deliver a program on time and to cost. But I think that's something, as Mike said earlier, we'll learn from about from the HAS program, what we can transfer that learning to what we're going to be doing with this funding, making sure that we can deliver it on time and to cost, and making sure that it makes that transformational change for Staley Bridge that we all want on this call.
Julian, just on that though, you mentioned about ordering materials. Now, typically, ordering of materials is done by our own engineers. It was given to the LEP at last minute. Are we not going to be using the LEP anymore? Because what we do see from the LEP is projects often go over budget and over time. And I think it's about time that we bring off the LEP, because it is absolute garbage and not delivering value for money for this council.
No, thanks, Councillor. If I could just come in on that point around materials, just to address any misconceptions around the materials delay. The delay was not in any way down to anything that had been done by the LEP. The correct materials were ordered. The supplier prepared the wrong materials, and that was then noted at a late date when the delivery order was checked. So you just to clarify that as a point of record. And in terms of project delivery, we'll be, as Julian noted, putting in a robust delivery program to ensure that we can deliver and achieve value for money on these schemes as we move forward.
Can I come back on that, Mike? So will that be, when are we likely to see a report through to exec or through the delivery group on how that process is likely to take place? What the timing is, what the proposed structure is.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Chair. I think there'll probably be some early reporting in April, and there is a delivery group meeting that's going to be set for April. The invitation has just gone out as this meeting was starting actually for that. In terms of some of the further detail, it will in part depend on how long it takes government to get back to us with detailed funding agreement around timescales and parameters, but we would hopefully receive that relatively quickly so that we can take it through our governance structure to formally accept the grant and then move into delivery. And I think another one of the lessons, I mean, Julian went through a number of lessons from the HAS program, but another fundamental one was there was very little delivery or activity in year one of the HAS program, for a number of different reasons. But that's meant that fundamentally you're trying to catch up on a program that's already got limited timescales from the outset, which is why it's important for us to get these structures and governance in place as quickly as possible.
I'm sure we welcome that.
Is there any other hands can I just nip in very quickly?
Yeah.
It's just to say, I'm looking at Staley Bridge proposals map, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek because it says, it explains what all the markings are, and it's got ... new pedestrian flow. And the new pedestrian flow is the old Riverwalk. So can I take it from that we will have a Riverwalk back? We used to have one years ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Councillor. Yeah, that is one of the fundamental things that we will be looking to bring forward and try and lock through this funding opportunity.
That'd be great.
We'll also be talking to relevant private landowners that have influence over the delivery of that.
Yeah, that's fine, mate. But if it came back, I'd just think that was absolutely, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is a real asset of Stalybridge, the river and the canal, which in some areas it does maximise the potential of it, but other areas where there's still actually a lot of potential that is currently unlocked, but we need to try and
the Riverside Walk, before it was closed off, was tarmacked, lighting columns, benching. So mothers used to go to the clinic and then walk back through to the War Memorial, sit and feed the ducks and everything, and it was closed. And I'm not going into all that. I'm just saying, if it comes back, it will be wonderful. Thank you.
Are we any more hands up there?
Yeah, just one last question, if I may. So I just want to ask, what plan will we be working to? Because under yourself, Adrian, you did a good plan, and you know, when you was chairing the Town Centre Challenge Group.
For that,
yes, I do give compliments from time to time.
Are you trying to get me sacked?
No. But we've now got a new delivery group, which is chaired by Councillor Sweeton, and we've got a brand new set of consultants. We used to have Cushman and Wakefield. There's now new consultants in place there. So no doubt that's going to cost £700,000 like the previous reports have done. What I want to ask on that is, how are we going to stick to this plan when you're building these inappropriate developments, shall I say, like the ones next to Tesco petrol station, where that isn't in line with what we are hoping to achieve to bring a more high-end experience to Stalybridge. Thank you. And that's my final question, as you'll be happy to know.
I think you partially answered that before, mate, but if you wanted to expand on it at all, I don't know.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jay. I think it's just to reiterate the importance of a robust planning framework that does govern work as it comes forward within the town.
Okay, right. Well, can I just ask one final question? Within the 19.9 million or whatever, is there some scope in there for employing people to sort of develop, oversee the work? Or is it purely for sort of capital, spades in the ground type stuff?
Yeah, no, thanks, Jay. We haven't seen the detail of the funding agreement, but based on our understanding from LUF round one, it is purely capital works that this does provide for. So yeah, we'll have to await the detail, but that is our understanding. But what we can certainly seek to do and will do through any contracts that are let is work to maximise any social value that can be driven through any procurement process. So we can work with our colleagues in the certainly in the employment and skills team to maximise kind of employment opportunities that we may be able to drive through the social value angle.
Excellent. Thank you for that, and thank you for your presentation and for contributions from the floor. I think it'd be useful. I think obviously we'll talk about this in no doubt, from various Labour and Tory groups will no doubt be talking about, how members are involved in this whole process, and we'll no doubt work out the best structure for doing that. I'm aware, obviously, that there's councillors who aren't directly involved with this project in this meeting, and I don't want to take their time up for issues which aren't directly which may not see as totally relevant to them. So it may be that we have a separate meeting or separate, perhaps a subgroup of this or something to just update people on a regular basis. I don't know, but perhaps we can have a think about that. So thanks anyway, and we'll look forward to a bright new Stalybridge in in the forthcoming years. So thank you. Moving on to item 5, we've got the equality strategy, and Simon Brunette. Is Simon around with us?
Yeah, I'm Chair, yes.
Excellent. Can you do your bit in 10 minutes, Simon?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a caveat, this is a borough-wide strategy, so unfortunately there are not elements that are specific to Mosley, Stalybridge or Duckingfield, but hopefully with your indulgence that will be okay. The strategy is 23-27, and it's something that the council is required to do within the Equality Act 2010. There's a requirement on the council on a number of statutory duties, and one of those statutory duties is to publish at least one equality objective every 4 years. For the period 2018 to 2022, the council and the CCG had a joint equality strategy, but now we've refreshed this new strategy for 23-27, and it's purely a council strategy, what with the end of the CCGs and the establishment of integrated care. The strategy was agreed by the Cabinet on the 8th of February, and the purpose of this presentation is just to give an update to the forums on that development and what it means in terms of actions in broad terms. In terms of evidence used to develop the strategy, we undertook a process of an LGA framework that is available from the LGA to test out where organisations are around equality issues. We did that informally rather than formally, but it was a useful exercise to go through to see where we were. We did last year and the year before, across the 2 years, the All Equals Charter with Manchester Pride, which was an external review by them of our approach to equalities and intersectionality. We use sessions at the Partnership Engagement Network, the outputs from the Inequalities Reference Group, which Councillor Feely chairs, and yourself and Councillor Sharif, or Councillor Tafeen Sharif are on. We got feedback from community champions, we did benchmarking with other areas, and we looked at a whole range of data. And in that process, we came to these 6 recommendations, which I won't go, objectives, 6 objectives, which I won't go through in detail. But in terms of action planning, they're going to turn into a number of areas of action around insight, access, links, impact, staff, and learning. And just to pick out a couple there, one of them around Health and Wellbeing Board and the Inequalities Reference Group and the Neighbourhood Forums, wanting to put greater links between the equality strategy and the poverty strategy, which is the next item on the agenda, through the Health and Wellbeing Board, wanting to review our equality impact assessment process to make sure it's sufficiently robust, and when services are being redesigned or new strategies developed, a consideration of protected characteristics are clearly taken into account. And in terms of access, COVID in particular showed us that when we had to move a lot of stuff to digital access, that presented challenges for some people. So have a review and a refresh of our access to service provision, whether that's language, whether that's physical access, digital access, Braille, easy read, all those issues to look at. And then I mentioned that LGA framework. One of the actions is to go through the process of getting LGA equality accreditation. So we did it informally to inform this strategy, and then we hope to go forward and do it formally. Just wanted to mention briefly protected characteristics, and as members will be aware, in the Equality Act 2010 there are 9 protected characteristics, which are those on the left. But locally in Tameside we have adopted local additional protected characteristics in an informal way. The ones there, carers, breastfeeding, armed forces and mental health, have been local protected characteristics for some time. But as part of this strategy going forward, we've adopted 3 more. One which is the socio-economic duty, which was actually in the Act but not enacted by the coalition government. But a lot of councils are now informally and locally adopting socio-economic duty. And then we've also included cared for children and care leavers, which seems appropriate where we are with our Children's Service Development Plan. And I put a question mark there because we are going to do a full review of the EI process and protected characteristics. It may be that we identify more. And what this is about really is that when people are developing a strategy, a new project, designing a service, they need to be thinking about what does that mean for these groups of people, so they're mindful of it. And then just briefly at the end, I just wanted to mention some linked work to the equality strategy. I've mentioned the Inequalities Reference Group before, and I've listed there some of the work streams that group have looked at. And the group is a range of people that represent different communities, come together once a quarter. They've done those topics on the left, and they've identified 4 more topics for the forthcoming year to look at. around debt, around private renting, around educational attainment, and around access to healthcare from people from ethnic minority communities. So there'll be semi-independent pieces of work that will inform the council's approach to those 4 areas. And then on the right, I've just listed things like the Poverty Truth Commission, the poverty strategy, which Debbie's going to talk about in a moment, and some other areas where we're getting feedback, involvement with to inform our equalities approach. But the essence of the strategy really is about those elements of improving our insight and understanding, improving access, having relevant links, ensuring we understand the impact of what we do on protected characteristic groups, get our staff trained up as appropriate, and get some learning from the LGA. And that's the quick run through, Chair. Hope that's okay.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Simon. I suppose, you know, from my point of view, it's making sure that some of that learning is then fed back into important projects, you know, like the regeneration project in Stalybridge, Ashton, etc., so that we can, you know, engage and deliver stuff which is absolutely relevant to the people of Tameside, people of Stalybridge, in this instance, or you know, wherever. Are there questions, Chair? Questions, Lewis.
Nobody's hands are up at the moment.
Okay, well, sorry. If you could, I mean, if people have got comments and questions once they've had a proper chance to have a look at the strategy, which I'm sure I know I've looked at. I looked at it and commented on it in the early part of the year, late part of last year maybe. But if other people wish to, they still got an opportunity to get back to and discuss things with you, Simon?
Yeah, the strategy is agreed, but the objectives are relatively broad. So any feedback now is welcome again, because it helps us refine our actions and what we do next. So it's very much a guide. Feedback's always welcome at any point as we go along. No problem at all. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you, Simon. Item 6, the anti-poverty strategy, which sort of fits alongside the equality strategy. And who's presenting? I'm not sure.
We have Debbie.
Oh, Debbie Watson, right?
The presentation.
Yeah. Debbie, do you want to fire away?
I do. I'm just going to try and get this on full screen. I think I'm having the same issue as Mike had.
Do you want to just try going through the first 2 slides, and then if not, I will share.
Is that
working fine?
Is that working? Great. Yep. Thank you. Evening, everyone. Thanks for putting this strategy on the agenda tonight. Really important piece of work that's happening in the borough. I think it's fair to say that poverty is our biggest public health challenge at the moment, with the cost of living crisis. In terms of what the presentation will cover tonight, it's covering the key priorities of our borough-wide approach to tackling poverty. There's full detail in the strategy, and both the strategy and the needs assessment that's informed the strategy are on the council's website for everyone to see. So the strategy was launched and published last week at the Health and Wellbeing Board, with a number of commitments across all partners in the system. So this is not just a council strategy, this is a borough-wide strategy with a number of actions to tackle poverty over the next 5 years. So in terms of where we are with this, I think it's fair to say that the people who are most affected by financial pressures are those who are already facing health and inequalities in the borough, both long-standing inequalities and those that have been worsened by the recent pandemic. The population is growing that's affected by poverty. That's including those families that are just about managing and are on the brink of real struggles, and often people holding down several jobs just to ensure that they build an income that allows them to cope with the cost of living crisis. So, you know, the rising costs of fuel, the rising costs of food and other essentials really do combine with our existing disadvantage in our vulnerable communities, and are putting many households at greater risk of hardship and giving them less opportunities. So The theme of this strategy is around building resilience, because we really want to look at a strengths-based approach to tackling this, look at how we can really drive economically active residents and support people appropriately. Just to say that Simon's talked a little bit about the work that we've done over the last 6 months around equality. This includes the work that we've been doing on poverty. We've done a lot of engagement with focus groups, looking at working with services across the council and people with lived experience to really get their feedback around what life is like and where the challenges are for people. And we've had the big conversation, public surveys, and we also had in July the Penn conference focusing on poverty. We've worked really closely with the Poverty Truth Commission, utilising their knowledge and experience to inform this work. Really driven through our inequalities reference group that Simon's covered. A lot of service mapping has been done to understand where our processes are, where our pinch points are, how people are actually accessing support. And we've mentioned there the needs assessment, which is a big meaty document that's linked to our joint strategic needs assessment. So in terms of some of the data, I'll not go through all of these, but you can see there that we've got some key statistics in the strategy which show the impact of poverty within our communities. Quite really high rates of death across the borough and insolvency, really high levels of food insecurity. Lots of people in the borough qualifying for support through local council tax support and free school meals, and relatively low numbers of jobs paying the living wage in Tameside. And all those measures really indicate that we've got real particular challenges around poverty in the borough. In terms of where we've been at the end of February, the Greater Manchester Poverty Action Group published a report, a really important report on anti-poverty strategies and what good practice is and what they should look like. And they make 12 recommendations that are outlined there. And just to give some assurance to members, the work that we're doing on this poverty strategy and the action plan reads really well across to these recommendations, and there's a list there on the right of some of the examples of the work that we've done to meet those recommendations, some of which I've already mentioned. Simon's mentioned the adoption of the socio-economic duty in our inequalities plans. Really important is our partnership approach. This is being driven through our Health and Wellbeing Board. It's one of our 3 priorities that the Health and Wellbeing Board have picked this year, alongside work and skills and healthy places. We have got a named exec member, Councillor Wills, who's the lead for this work. And we've got lots of work that's happening around piloting tools like the money advice referral tool in our neighbourhoods. What we are doing is we are developing an action plan that's in draft at the moment, and we're also developing a poverty dashboard of data so that we can see if we're making progress and where we might need to go further faster. So to showcase some of the good work in the borough, within the strategy, there is a range of case studies that have been included, highlighting the success of the Tameside in Work programme, really keen to ensure that we align our work on work and skills. We need more people in better paid work. We need to develop new skills and increase confidence of our residents. The other case study there shows the work that's happening across partners such as Onward Homes, who supported our Helping Hand winter warming events. And the image at the bottom of the slide there is our Helping Hands campaign that I know everyone's familiar with. So just to kind of next to last slide is these are the areas, our objectives that are in the strategy. So those are the 10 key priorities that we need to take action on in order to tackle poverty and build resilience in the borough. So this is, as I've said, not just about the work of the council, but is all partners, and we've got a real good commitment to that through the Health and Wellbeing Board. And all partners last week signed up to our poverty charter and committed to joining with the council to really tackle these areas of focus. Now, some of those are going to take some time to achieve, such as raising incomes across the borough, but there are also some really practical steps that we can take. We're doing lots of work around digital exclusion and making sure that poverty is everybody's business across Tameside and raising awareness of this issue. So final slide for me, thank you, Chair, is just to say that our next steps, this is an ongoing piece of work. On the back of the strategy launch, we are looking to make sure that we are keeping up the momentum, and we've got a dedicated working group that's been established leading on this and ensuring progress is made, and we've got a draft action plan to deliver on those 10 key priorities in development. So the final point for me really is a call to action for everyone to please read the strategy and look at the needs assessment, in particular those 10 key priorities, and consider what we can all do to help deliver on those priorities. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Debbie. That's it's really informative, and sorry that we've had to rush through it. Really, are there questions, Lewis?
There are no hands up, Chair.
Right. I mean, I think it'd be really useful if you could come back at some point and sort of discuss the action plan, but specifically in terms of the 5 wards which this area forum covers. You know, because they will be obviously very different from ward to ward and often area to area, I suppose. And obviously, wards boundaries don't respect poverty lines and all the rest of it. But I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, the needs assessment does break some areas down and has got some specific details which we can pull out. I've got to say, a lot of the challenges that we've got in the strategy are completely across all the borough and across all neighbourhoods, with all our residents affected by the cost of living. But absolutely, Councillor Pearce, we can do that for the next meeting, and we'll be more than happy to bring back the action plan and the dashboard and some progress update. Thank you.
Okay, well, we look forward to seeing you on the 21st of June then. So excellent, thank you. And our final item is the early health strategy. And who we got to present?
That'll be me. So my name's Faye Edwards. I'm Service Unit Manager for Early Help Early Years and Neighbourhood.
Okay, well, welcome.
Hi. I'm really sorry, can I ask you to present? Would that be okay? Do you have the presentation? I can try and present, but my tech skills are not great, I have to say.
Yeah, I do it in the best way that you feel able, really.
Yep, just give me a moment.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, that's fine. The slides are on top of each other. Oh, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm here to talk about the early help, Tameside's early help strategy that's been refreshed. So as part of early help, it's around sort of families getting that extra support before issues escalate, where statutory service is then required as part and parcel of that. That can be in a range of issues, right, the way from sort of attending school and nursery and getting that education required, from mental health problems that are instigated within the family throughout. It can be children that have missed health appointments that obviously leads to sort of that unhealthy lifestyle. It can be a toxic trio as part of domestic abuse, or it can be in relation to addiction in terms of drug and alcohol. It can be young people and families associated with antisocial behaviour and crime, or exactly what Deb was saying around that sort of financial struggle, which we're seeing a lot more of in terms of what that looks like. So as people were talking, I just had a general sort of look in terms of the data for the East, and we do something what's called presenting issues to sort of understand actually sort of what our localities are sort of telling us in relation to sort of being able to provide the evidence-based practice, and making sure that obviously we're targeting the families and we're providing what they need. But in terms of our presenting issues, the first one was around parenting. The second was around neglect. The third one was around housing and debt, and the fourth one was around domestic abuse. We have a top 10 sort of presenting issues in terms of what we look for, and actually within the East in the February, they were the referrals in terms of sort of what we're getting in for that sort of early help. In terms of sort of Tameside, you know, we support practitioners across all settings to provide that early help because it's everyone's responsibility. And again, it's around that getting that in earliest as we can, that earliest possible intervention for children in terms of sort of what needs that and what that looks like. But again, providing that holistic approach to the family because we are aware of sort of intergenerational issues that sort of crop up in families. So there's some of the things in relation to that early help that we sort of see. Next slide, please. So in terms of sort of the reason for updating the strategy, obviously things have massively moved on. As part of that, we now have a new thresholding document that really gives clear examples around sort of universal sort of early help and target family support and that specialist intervention from children's services. And again, it clarifies actually what type of support is needed at that time and looks at help or harm in terms of obviously sort of what that looks like around that early help. Again, it's around sort of responding in terms of the Ofsted sort of recommendations and the change in their criteria. It's around the McAllister review and then obviously sort of the government's response to that in relation to stable homes built on love, in relation to actually being really clear about that identification early, being able to support that at that early help stage and prevent that escalation. And actually, if it is escalating, to be able to move through the system quite quickly to be able to provide that support and move that down and out again in terms of that universal service. Again, it's to respond to the launch of the family hubs and that start for life, and especially around that 1,001 days, including pregnancy and the first 2 years of a child life is massively important. So we had our launch of our first family hub at Greenside Lane on Monday, and the second launch is on the 5th of April, which is at Ridge Hill, what is at the moment the Children's Centre, but that'll be Ridge Hill Family Hub, and that's on the 5th of April at 2 till 4:30, and that's a drop-in where actually parents can get some information and partners will be there to be able to network, to be able to look at what support is needed within that area. Again, it sort of is a response in relation to the national crisis. We know that the pandemic has had a massive impact in terms of mental health across families, but also in terms of the cost of living. Particularly for East, housing and debt is third in terms of our presenting issues just for February. We have seen a massive rise in terms of sort of food bank, in terms of benefit, gas and electric, even down to sort of private landlords where actually sort of families are coming to us where actually they're being made homeless because with the interest rates going up, landlords are selling their properties now in terms of sort of what that looks like. So not only have we got the cost of living in terms of sort of day to day, we've also got sort of the housing issue in terms of what it is. So again, it's around that holistic support to make sure that actually we can support that family wholeheartedly and make sure that actually that targeted family help within that early help offer is really, really robust and clear. Next slide, please, Chair. Thank you. So as part of the key principles in terms of sort of what that looks like, again, it's around that right help, right time, right place, by the right environment in terms of what that looks like for families, children, young people. It's around actively listening to the voice of young people in line with the listening framework, but actually it's about embedding that in practice. So we're really clear around sort of resilient safety planning in terms of actually sort of what life is like for them and to be really clear around sort of what that looks like and that analytical overview in relation to that to be able to sort of piece that together. Holistic support for families and around that bespoke need of actually what does that look like for them. So in relation to, we've moved away from interventions and it's now more of that targeted early help. So actually really clear around the support mechanisms to be able to build on that. Use of signs of safety in terms of what's working well. It's very much a relationship-based model that early help is built on, and rightly so. And again, around that help and harm of actually sort of what that looks like moving forward. Again, around them support networks and building on the strengths in terms of the community offer, the local offer, and within their extended family as to actually what that looks like to be able to build that resilience and to be able to support each other within their own communities. So we do actually a lot of planning around that, whether that's with schools or whether that's with health or whether that's within our internal teams around that step down to make sure there's a really robust plan that actually families are able to continue that change to be able not to request that service, but they recognise that need and are able to sort that at the earliest opportunity. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in terms of safeguarding is everyone's business, very similar to poverty is everyone's business, absolutely. And it's about sort of understanding and promoting the welfare of the children and that sort of child-centred approach in terms of what we're there to do. In terms of the Munro report, and it's still very live today, you know, it says early help is better for children and it stops problems from getting worse. It stops that escalation if we're able to identify that, be able to support that family and work with that family to make sure that life is better. It's around that multi-agency approach, and within COVID, people sort of retracted to sort of do their core business due to obviously sort of responding to that need. We're now seeing much of a multi-agency approach to that, which is right and proper, and that trauma-informed response in terms of understanding actually sort of what that looks like for children and what that looks like for families. And again, that coordination of services to make sure we're not duplicating, but it's who sliced the pie is it, and actually how we can work with families to make sure that they don't step into service and they're resilient in terms of what's going on. Again, in terms of everyone's confident in relation to data protection, I've read various serious case reviews over my time, and it doesn't say that, you know, there was too much information shared. If anything, it says there was a lack of information shared in terms of its relevance and what that mean. We need to be really clear that actually we're passing that information on, and actually it's around that child to be able to advocate for that child and to make sure that child is safe, absolutely, and provide that early help at the beginning in terms of the earliest possible opportunity. And again, for me, you know, I'd rather be told something 3 times than not at all, because it's about piecing that jigsaw together. And actually, if that's an issue, then we need to make sure that that child is safe and we're able to support that family to be able to meet some of their needs. Next slide, please. So in terms of the consultation and in terms of the VCS SFE sector, that is voluntary community, faith and social enterprise. I apologise, it's an acronym. It's not great that we use them. But as part of that, there was 2 interactive workshops that were held with representatives from across that community offer health, the council and police. And it was very much around sort of establish what was working well in lines of sort of our sort of signs of safety, but what needs to be improvement across the borough that actually sort of led to the creation of the strategy and the priorities. We will look to seek further feedback from the following groups, as obviously they're stated there, and there's an online survey being promoted on social media that's been circulated internally to partners, including schools and families, and then that will go wider. Next slide, please. So in terms of governance and timescales, there's an online consultation that ends on the 5th of 5th, and it ends, public promotion ends on the 26th of March. And then obviously you've sort of got the governance in terms of the timescales for the actual early help strategy to be signed off in terms of what that looks like. Next slide, please. So in terms of our next steps, we've got the new launch, which is July 23, and that's work across the partnership to develop that implementation, to be able to understand that early help is everyone's business and what does that mean to everybody and what can they offer as part of that, to make sure that actually when we're working with families, we've got some really robust plans out there and we've got a really good offer in relation to that early help across the partnership. And then obviously the governance and reporting process in terms of sort of what that looks like following sort of the consultation and the sign off of the strategy. I'm sorry, that was a very quick whistle stop tour. Are there any questions?
3 questions there.
We have one hand up, Councillor Jackson.
Yes, you want to fire away?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I apologise, I've got to go off to another meeting that starts at 8, which I'm chairing, so I'll be very quick. Really good report, but what I'd like to know, I really welcome the family hubs, and I'm glad that one's going to be launched at Ridge Hill, which is great, in Stalybridge North, but I just want to know what the plans are for Carbrook. So part of Stalybridge North's ward, it obviously includes Carbrook, and we've got a huge pocket, I'd say quite a big pocket of deprivation, not dissimilar actually to Ridge Hill, and it's from the Manchester overspill. And I really would like to see one of these family hubs in Carbrook. They seem to be out on a limb, because, you know, a lot of people, we have a bus service that isn't very proactive, and so people don't drive, and therefore they've got to make the way to Stalybridge maybe to access services like early intervention, what you're saying about, Faye. And so I'd like to know what the plans are for something in Carbrook. And I also link with that, if I may, Chair, is that we've got 2 housing associations. What's the partnership working with social landlords? Because they have a big part to play, duty and care to their residents, their tenants, as we have. And I just would think that that's an opportunity to work with the 2 social landlords in Carbrook on, onward, but it's Moscare and Jigsaw Homes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Am I able to respond? Is that okay? So thank you very much, Councillor Jackson, for your questions and comments. So as part of Family Hub, there is a hub and spoke model as part of that. And within the hub and spoke model, we have home learning as part of that. So actually, we're going to employ to home learning, because actually, in terms of that 0 to 5, we know that it starts in the home in terms of sort of understanding that learning and what's being put into that family home as part and parcel of that. There will be more outreach as part of that. So obviously, we have the children's centres that have been identified as our hubs, but then we'll have a spoke model. So actually we'll be doing much more outreach and detached work as part of that. We'll be working very closely with our community partners in terms of actually when they deliver sort of community activities such as toddler groups, such as stay in plays, etc. We'll be working a lot more closely with them in relation to what that looks like. And because we were successful as one of the 75 authorities to gain that funding, we're able to branch out and do that, which I think is really sort of exciting, and definitely Carbrook is one of them areas. We have started now to pinpoint sort of what our present issues are, so we're able to be really clear around actually what our families need within them areas. So as I said before, around sort of the debt and housing, I've had conversations with colleagues from social care, and we're actually looking to have meetings around the housing provider to see actually what they can sort of contribute and what that criteria looks like. We have things like homeless prevention officers, etc. We need to be really clear about their roles and responsibilities to be able to utilise them to make sure that actually our families are not under that stress even more in terms of what that looks like, and actually what they can sort of bring proactively as part of that early help offer to families, and actually to be able to get in there earlier. So actually sometimes we don't hear in terms of when it becomes that eviction of the family from the family home. We need to know much more before that to be able to work with that family of what that looks like. So I absolutely take your points on board. I can definitely update in terms of the housing and moving that forward. Jigsaw, a part of the launch and a part of the family hubs and right and proper, and we need to get more housing associations involved with that. I think in terms of social landlords, that's quite hard, but obviously we'll work with our bigger providers to make sure that we can start to break down some of them barriers.
That's great, thank you. Have we any more questions before we finish the item?
There are no more hands up, Chair.
No? Okay, well, that's great. Thanks, Faye, for that. And I'm sure many of us will be wandering along on the 5th of April to meet you all and to discuss, how that fits in with the local area and other local projects, and to make sure we, it gets a good start. So with that, can I just thank everybody again for participating in the meeting? Thank Lewis for his work tonight, and well, we'll see you on the other side in June 23. Thank you very much.